affiliated schools, Alliance, Starehe. I've met Bomerians. I've met people from Kotet. I've met people from all the choice schools, even people from Yale, like Senator Eddie Okech. I am yet to meet in the corridors of Parliament, even though I meet a lot of them in the corridors of county assemblies. I am yet to meet someone from Nairobi School who has made it to Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Nairobi School is our perennial rival, and on that account, there have been more senators, MPs, cabinet secretaries from Lenana School as compared to those from Nairobi School. Mr. Speaker, I welcome the boys and wish them success in the upcoming exams. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang, these ministerial schools also have brought the senators to this house. I think I'm one of those who went to the ministerial schools. But we thank God. Let us hear Senator Okenyuri Esther, who is closer to them injuries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to join my colleague senators in welcoming the students from Changes. Back in my days in high school, I was in the Kenya High School, alias the Bomerians. Those were our brother schools for a very long time until I came out here. So to the boys in Lenana School, you have a very golden opportunity. Kenya is a land of all possibilities, and you've been privileged to be in that good school that other people have not had the opportunity to. And remember, you've actually made it to this Senate, so it's gone down in history. So when you go out there, do not disappoint the rest. And I want to differ with my good senator, Senator Kajwang from Homa Bay, on discouraging you from being politicians. Politics and political leadership needs a test of smart brains with clarity of mind, so that we also change how things are done in these platforms. So before you pursue your other ambitions, I also want to encourage you. I'm a young person like you are. I was in one of those privileged schools from a very humble background, but I've transited all the way to this national platform. So I want to encourage you that you have all the chances you do to explore your abilities and shine in this country, not only in your different careers that you want to take up, but also in political leadership. Education is the only other thing that makes all of us equal. So in this house, you can actually present your ideas so long as you sell your policies well to the people. So I want to discourage you from solely listening to what the good senator from Homa Bay is saying, that Kenya does not need more politicians. We need political leadership so that we sort out most of these challenges we are facing as a country. You're welcome. Thank you.
Senator Richard Onyonka.
Ndugu Speaker, ningependa kusema asante sana kwa kunipa hii nafasi ili nichangie hili jambo la kuwakaribisha wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Lenana. Vile nimesikia ndugu yangu Mheshimiwa Kajwang amesema, mimi nilikuwa na bahati, sikuenda Lenana, lakini nilikuwa na bahati kusoma na ndugu yake ambaye anaitwa Joe Koto Kajwang, ambaye tulisoma naye katika shule ya upili ya Kisii. Baada hapo nadhani tulikuja tukakutana chuo kikuu cha Nairobi, na hapo ndio tulikutana na nduguye mkubwa Kajwang senator na yeye pia. Kwa hivyo ingawa tulienda kwa zile mashule ambako hata ukitafuta kwa runinga hazipatikani, tulijaribu sana tukakuja mpaka tumefika hapa mahali tupo. Jambo la pili ningependa kumwambia Mheshimiwa Kajwang na hao wanafunzi wako hapa, sababu nimelazimika kuzungumza kwa lugha ya Kiswahili ni kwa sababu ningependa kuwasihi nyinyi vijana wadogo kuwa lugha ya taifa ni muhimu. Na hii lugha ya taifa kokote ambako utakuwa unatembea nchini Kenya, hata kwa ulimwengu, mtu akikuuliza wewe unatoka wapi, nasema Kenya, jambo la kwanza nakuuliza ni habari gani. Kwa hivyo ningependa kuwasihi wale wanafunzi ambao wanasoma katika shule ya upili ya Lenana, shule yenu ina jina nzuri, shule yenu ina heshima kuna viongozi wengi sana wamesoma kwa hiyo shule yenu. Kwa hivyo ningependa kuwasihi nyinyi muwe na heshima, muhakikishe kuwa mna nidhamu, muendelee kufanya vizuri, kwa sababu sasa mababa wenu hawana utajiri mwingi. Ukisoma sasa, ile akili ambayo unatoka kwa masomo ndio inakupa nafasi ukatembea ulimwengu. Nadhani mmenielewa, na ningependa kuwaambia kuwa ikiwezekana, angalia yale mawaidha ambayo tunatumia kwa hili jumba, standing orders, angalia katiba yetu, our constitution, ili muanze kujizoesha kujua ni lipi ambalo unataka kufanya ukitaka kuwa unatafuta kazi ya, kama ni kazi ya MCA ama unataka kuwa mbunge ama ukiwa seneta. Ndio ukifika hapa utapata kuwa unajua na unaelewa ni lipi ambapo tunafanya kwa hili jumba. Ningependa kuambia kuwa asante kwa kufika, na vile nimekaa hapa, Mheshimiwa Kajwang' amesema kuwa atanunulia soda kabla nyinyi hamjaondoka. Asante sana ndugu Speaker.
Senator Okech, are you saying you also at Lenana School?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did not go to Lenana School, but I went to a very pretty good school. And I went to French School Kamusinga in Bungoma, and I can see even the faces of the students there getting excited, because French School is a very good school. You know, our motto was use common sense. And, you know, Kajwang' has struggled so much, Senator Kajwang' has struggled so much with his own conflicted self of why should he stay in politics or should he go back and practice law. And I can assure you that that's an issue of common sense. Common sense because Kajwang' has been very consistent in advising Changerians who have been able to come to this house not to go to politics. What I wanted to tell my friends, I think that I'm also very close to you age-wise, and sometimes I do have the privilege to be also close with you in terms of just experiences. You know, I can hear some whispers behind me, but that's fine. What I wanted to tell you is that you don't forget where you have come from. I think sometimes when you are balkanized into a group of students from Lenana, sometimes you can forget your backgrounds. What makes you today is extremely the backgrounds that you come from. And if you look at your own individual backgrounds, you have got challenges and opportunities that you have faced in the past. And being in Lenana, therefore, means that your future is extremely important. And what I wanted to encourage you to do is that you don't arrive. Lenana is not the last place you want to go. The world should be your stage of play, but with regards to politics, I want to urge you to go and pursue all your dreams. Go and pursue your dreams and be whatever you want to be in this world. Be lawyers, be great doctors, be great engineers, but always remember that all those careers that we pursue them so that we can be able to contribute to the society. And the biggest contribution you can have in the society is contribution to have your seat where decisions about resources are made. And the decisions about resources are always made in politics. So politics is decisions about making resources that will affect you, your children in future, your families you have left at home, and it's the best science you can ever have. So don't be lured by Senator Kajwang' to forget politics. What is affecting this country is that sometimes politicians we have had bad manners, and what I will encourage you is that you groom good values, you have clear vision about your lives, so that when you become a politician, you become a politician who cares about their people truly. And as I leave you, Jomo Kenyatta said that responsibility of nation building, which is what you're going to be participating on in the future, is going to be given to reliable custodians with good values. be that custodian wherever you'll go, and especially when you find yourself in politics. I thank you and wish you well as you visit with us. And in case Kajwang forgot his wallet, he can consult with me as a neighbor, and I'll be able to show that you get your soda as you go home. Thank you so much.
Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon and a delegation from the British Army Unit Training Unit in Kenya, popularly known as BATUK. The delegation is undertaking a standard tour in the Senate. I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that we may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. 1, Major David Kalawa. 2, Warrant Officer 2, Vesi George. 3, Sergeant Galang Sudesh. Koplo Vakasegu Una. Lance Koplo Parvis Robin. Lance Koplo Lamosa Daniel. Mrs. Eunice Kinywa, Mrs. Jane Oyugi, and the last but not the least, Mr. Brian Ochieng. Honorable Senators, in the usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Let me give the majority leader to welcome our visitors for 2-3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I join you in welcoming the visiting delegation from the British Army. Mr. Speaker, I am a big fan of the poetry works of Rudyard Kipling, and I love the way he refers to them as Tommies and bootnecks. It's good to have them with us this afternoon, because I know members of the Foreign Relations, National Security and Foreign Relations Committee have gone on a long digging spree many a times this session and previously, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we have a long-standing relationship between Kenya and the UK, with specific reference to the work that British Army do around the area of Nanyuki, Mr. Speaker, on this specific mission that brings this visiting delegation to this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you have been a visitor to Nanyuki, I know you can't be because that's your home area. Therefore, on many occasions, either for one reason or the other, when you're not at home in Meru, you find your way to Nanyuki. But the likes of Senator Eddie Okech and the rest of us who come from the western side of the country, whenever we visit Nanyuki, Nanyuki is testament of the thriving town of Nanyuki, is testament of the good work that this organization continues to do, Mr. Speaker. It's built out of, many businesses have been built out of either trading or any forms of relationship that exist, Mr. Speaker, between the local community and the BATUK organization, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, to have them visit us is a great honor. I know, Mr. Speaker, for a fact that it hasn't been extremely rosy. The last few years, there have been difficulties and difficult conversations. As you'd expect of any human relationship, Mr. Speaker, there are times where things arise, but the most important thing is how you're able to amicably resolve and ensure that the long-standing relationship that Kenya enjoys with the UK continues. I know that our colleagues in the National Assembly did a tremendous work in ensuring that before renewing, because this cooperation agreement is renewed, I think almost 3 or every 5 years, that there are certain terms and conditions that were put in place to ensure that you protect both the soldiers and the local community, so that any matters that had previously arisen based on the experience of the previous years you're able to forestall and ensure that the soldiers that come to Kenya do enjoy their time. If you read, Mr. Speaker, the journals, and I'm a favorite at this, of many soldiers, they give testament of whatever they studied and their experience in Nanyuki and how it impacted on their, later on in their careers as soldiers and army men and women, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this is a relationship that we need to guard jealously and ensure that it's mutually beneficial to both Kenya and the United Kingdom. Therefore, I do hope, Mr. Speaker, that in the duration of their stay, they will get to enjoy and learn all that there is to learn about this parliament. If they have many other questions, they're always welcome to interact with members of parliament that are here, the senators that are here, and those that are of the National Assembly, so that they can have a fulfillment of what they sought to do when they set on their calendar and programs to visit Parliament of Kenya this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. So I join you on behalf of our colleagues and all senators in the House this afternoon to welcome them and wish them a fruitful stay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Let us have the chairperson, Standing Committee on National Security and Foreign Relations.
Not on this one.
Yeah?
Not on this.
Okay, Senator Lelegwe, Steve Lumbesi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join you and the Majority Leader and the rest of my colleagues to welcome the British Training Unit officers to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, sir, the British Training Unit is also a unit that trains in Samburu. And I wish to thank them and appreciate their efforts in working with the communities in Samburu and making sure that the marginalized communities get services. And I appreciate the good services they are giving the people by providing them water, building schools, and also doing medical camps to offer services, medical services to those communities. And these communities have been forgotten a long time ago by governments of Kenya, and I thank them because they're really doing good work in the communities. One thing that I need to urge them is that when they do this corporate social responsibility, which they are doing in Samburu and other parts of Kenya, is they should make sure that they involve the communities and also the leadership in those regions. And I appreciate because they have been inviting the leadership of the counties they operate in, and when they are making their decisions, and I encourage them to be making such decisions so that we make sure that communities get services and also they get humble time in doing their trainings in those regions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I had promised to give one more senator to make a comment on the statement by Senator Olsosi. So let me keep my promise. Senator William Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statement by the Senator Olsosi on the issue of decassetment. Mr. Speaker, if you listen to all the members who spoke to this particular statement, it's like this is a challenge that is arising in almost every county. In fact, all the members who spoke to this statement have very specific issues and concerns in their counties. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to agree with the other members who say that I think there is need for the committee to look at this more holistically. I heard Honorable Onyonga requesting the majority leader to speak to the president about this issue. I think that is not the way to go. Mr. Speaker, the procedure normally is that these are matters that this House can take up, and in our counties, and they go to the ministries, the ministry in charge, then they do what we normally call the cabinet memoranda, then the cabinet approves, then it now comes to the House for adoption or for approval. So I want to agree. In Baringo, for example, Mr. Speaker, we have several schools and institutions which are actually built in those areas that are considered as forest areas. But practically speaking, Chair or Speaker, those are several acres of land, you know, in schools, in colleges, and so on. And that, yet when you go to the Ministry of Forestry, you discover they are actually gazetted forest areas. I think it is important that we really degazzette these areas and be able to issue titles to these institutions. I think it is a critical issue which we need to do. So that, Mr. Speaker, some schools, for example, or colleges, occupy those areas. They have no title deeds. And all the time they receive threats from the Ministry of Forest and with the rangers and so on. It is high time, I think, we need, so that even when we talk about now building, I mean, putting up or planting 15 billion trees, we should be able to do so even in those schools, but not as gazetted areas or as gazetted forest. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important. Then the other aspect, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, is there are areas which are not gazetted, which have been degazetted, given to institutions, and the original owners of those particular lands, Mr. Speaker, are not actually compensated. And the understanding between the government then and the occupants of those areas is to be given land elsewhere. And Mr. Speaker, those days it was interesting because you find a politician from a certain area given a list of people to be allocated land. And that MP or minister takes the whole portion of land given to those people. So I think, again, those people who had been promised to be given, to be compensated and given allocation of land, they are now all over the place, suffering in their homes and so on. The so-called right holders, Mr. Speaker. In a place like Baringo North, in Baringo County, Simo location, a lot of fellows were displaced. So I think I want to agree that there is need for the committee to, and I think I'm a member of this committee, Mr. Speaker, and we are going to really do a lot in terms of ensuring that we don't only look at Otosi's situation, but also what's happening in the country, so that we bring an end to the suffering of people and institutions without title deeds for their institutions. So I support, Mr. Speaker.
Let us get the last statement from Senator Christo Asige.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am also joining the rest of the House in welcoming the delegations upstairs in the gallery. Though I wasn't a student, of course, at Lenana School, I did spend a lot of time studying in the UK, Bristol specifically, which is famous for its harborside, the St. Paul's Carnival, and, Mr. Speaker, it has very, very good beer. So I hope that the delegation who are here, as I did, find a home away from home in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on claims of inaccurate data of persons with disabilities, PWDs, in official data collections efforts reflected in the National Census of 2019. In this statement, the committee should state the disability prevalence rate in Kenya, recorded in the last 4 years, disaggregating these figures into gender, age, type of disability, and county. State steps in place to ensure that all PWDs, including children under the age of 5, are properly accounted for in disability statistics and data collection efforts, tabling evidence of capitation released to the NCPWD to cater for this special interest group in the last 4 years. Shed light on allegations that 413,620 PWDs who are counted in the National Census of 2009 were not accounted for in the census of 2019, stating measures in place to improve the accuracy and comprehensiveness to improve disability statistics. State-targeted interventions to improve the current tools in use and training accorded to all enumerators to ensure full inclusivity and accounting of physical, sensory, and neurodiverse disabilities, both visible and invisible. And lastly, state plans to engage public and key stakeholders towards State plans to engage the public and key stakeholders toward audit census tools for the comprehensiveness of questions, designs, and categorization of disability status. I thank you.
Thank you. I can see some requests here, but I don't know whether they are in support of this statement by Senator Sige. Those who are not interested on this particular one, maybe you can withdraw the cans. Senator Manzo Daniel, very brief comments, just 2 minutes.
Yeah, brief, yes. I arise to support that statement by a wonderful senator. I want to say that the place of people with a disability in this country has been left without proper legal structures at times, whether they fall under national or county, and it's really been hard. But what I want to ask the senators and members of parliament is to give them a special place. Like you see, part of my employees, I have taken 1 or 2 people with disabilities. It's one way of helping them and encouraging men, but it's an adult who works for my office. And we really need to support the cause of the people with disability, make sure that the ones who are hidden in the villages are produced, are come out and are able to participate, are able to go to school. And I believe as a wonderful senator is doing, who is very well learned and is able to become a senator. All these people have a chance and are able to, are very much able to do whatever a normal person can be able to do. So I support, and also Speaker, allow me to welcome the delegations and say that I went to Starehe Boys Center where we were brought up by a British soldier, a former British soldier, who brought up 15,000 poor boys who are big-time people in the world today. And I was also privileged to have my fees paid by Princess Anne, the daughter of the Queen of England. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Manzo. Senator Bugwa Mungai George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise here to support the statement by Senator Sige. And on the onset, want to state that, Mr. Speaker, data is everything. And because of the inaccurate statistics for the persons with disabilities in this country, the resources allocated to that sector have been dwindling over the years. And we are unable to get the services which are enshrined in the constitutions for persons living with disabilities because of the inaccurate data. So, Mr. Speaker, I support so that this sector can get what is rightfully theirs. Thank you.
Senator Baz Sheikh Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the statement from Honorable Sige. Mr. Speaker, you know this well, this country, we have so many disabled, but however, services and all work given to them is not actually adequate, and most instances have been neglected so much. It's a high time that this country should take serious and give a quota, as they have already enshrined in the Constitution, that the disabled, actually disability is not the inability. That actually shows Honorable Sige is perfectly in this house as a representative of the disabled group. And you can see how she contributes every day. And it's very, very active. And I want to congratulate her on that. It's a high time that we need to give space, we need to support the disabled, that we need to give them enough resources so at least they can be able to contribute in the national work, national required functions that they're able to do. I remember when I was back when I was a member of parliament, I built a school for the disabled, especially for the deaf. And I'm really impressed today. Those students actually doing a wonderful job. I was really impressed that they did very well For the last 3 years, they did the KCC, and they're performing very well. I think only the thing is that we're not giving enough opportunity and resources to the disabled persons. I therefore support the statement, and I need to be serious on these things, and this country needs to be serious on the issues of disability. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The last one, Senator Sengo Karunda Beth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise also to support this statement by Senator Christo Asike, aka VIP. Actually, in this country, we really need to support people who are differently abled. And they also contributing to the building of the nation. We know they are differently abled. They are talented differently. They can serve the nation also in a unique way. So we need to support them at both levels, at the national government, the county governments, and if actually a fund could be put forward to support them differently. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wanted to know, as the argument is going forward about CDF, about GAF for the women reps, and also the kitty for senators. Can we also have a kitty for people living with disability in this country? This will support and encourage many to take leadership at different levels. I support the statement, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you.
Senator Madago Jackson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statement sought by Senator Asike on the issues of persons with disability. Mr. Speaker, without proper data, it will be impossible for this country to be able to plan effectively for persons with disability. And Mr. Speaker, when you see statistics that are not consistent, it means even government interventions that are supposed to go towards supporting persons with disability in this country will be so inconsistent and doesn't make any meaningful progress, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I therefore rise to support the statement by Senator Asige that through the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, they need to supply proper data of persons with a disability. And Mr. Speaker, as I rise to support this statement, we also want to encourage families in this country, Mr. Speaker, who have persons living with disability or children with various disabilities, to make sure that those children are brought to the fore and are given opportunity to access education. We know in some cultures in this country that when people have children with disability, there's a tendency to hide those children, and probably that is also what would contribute to them not being counted during the census. But we want to urge Kenyans of all walks of life that having a child with disability does not mean that that child cannot make any meaningful contribution to this country. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, having been a governor in Uasin Gishu County, we were able to recruit over 100 persons with disability. And I can tell you, amongst the best public servants we had are persons with disability. Mr. Speaker, if you visited the county government of Uasin Gishu in the executive, all our executive officers were being cleaned by deaf people. And I can tell you they were very effective and very efficient. As a nation, we need to properly plan for people with disability. And I want to reiterate here, Mr. Speaker, that there is need for compliance to the laws that have already been provided for. For example, Mr. Speaker, if you go to all government offices, accessibility to those offices are still a challenge. You therefore don't expect them to be able to seek services like other citizens with ease, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this statement, and the committee should further probe on other funds that has been set aside for persons with disability, particularly funds that go through the offices program, Mr. Speaker, because sometimes they don't end up in the intended recipients. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this statement. Thank you.
The last one from Senator Mwalumba Jones Mwashushe. Senator Mwaruma.
There's a problem, okay. Yeah, nashukuru Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa hii fursa ili kuchangia taarifa ambayo imeletwa na Seneta mteule, Seneta Asige, kuhusu mambo ya watu wanaoishi na ulemavu. Katika taarifa yake amesema ya kwamba hakuna takwimu za kutosha za watu wanaoishi na ulemavu. Na vile wasemaji wamesema, waliotangulia kusema, wamesema kwamba bila takwimu ama data hatuwezi panga mambo ya walemavu. Na kusema ule kweli, Mheshimiwa Spika, Kenya tuko na shida ya kuangazia mambo ya watu wanaoishi na ulemavu. Leo tulikuwa katika kamati ya elimu tukitunga sheria ya disability bill, na tulikuwa tunahusisha wadau katika ile sheria, na tulipata mambo ya kushangaza sana ya kwamba kuna wanafunzi wengi ama wafanyikazi wengi katika mashule ambao hawajalipwa mishahara kwa miezi 9, 10 na zaidi. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika shule za wanaoishi na ulemavu zinahitaji walimu, lakini kando na walimu, Mheshimiwa Spika, wale wanahitajika ni wale caregivers ama watu ambao wataangalia wale watoto. Wengine wanahitaji kuoshwa, wengine wanahitaji kusukumwa sehemu moja hadi nyingine. Kwa hivyo tutaangalia hii taarifa kwa undani, na naomba kamati ya Labor na Social Welfare iangalie kwa undani, kwa sababu wakati wa bunge la 12 tulisukuma sana ile Ministry ya Labor na Social Welfare ipate kupata takwimu za kutosha na kuandikisha wale wote wanaoishi na ulemavu na kuhakikisha ya kwamba wameenda shuleni. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nashukuru sana Senator Asige, na anafanya kazi nzuri ya kupigania wale wanaoishi na ulemavu Kenya. Tutangojea hiyo ripoti ambayo itakuja kutoka kwa hiyo kamati, na najua mambo ya walemavu yatazidi, lakini hasa katika kila kaunti tupate takwimu ama data ya kutosha ya wale ambao wanaishi na ulemavu, na zile pesa ambazo wanahitaji kupata kama kwa inua jamii wote wawe wanaweza kupata. Kwa hivyo nashukuru Mheshimiwa Asige, na asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa hiyo nafasi.
Senator Sigei, 2 minutes, kindly.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. I would like to also add my voice to the statement by the Honorable Senator Asige. Mr. Speaker, when we speak about the inaccuracy of the data about persons living with disability in this country, it is not only a matter of subject which speaks into the Social and Labor Committee. Mr. Speaker, the latest census that we had in this country has got a percentage of 2.2% of people living with disability. That translates to 0.9 million people. Failure to have an accurate data in itself, Mr. Speaker, affects the inability of the government of the day and any other government institution, whether at the county level or at the national level, to mainstream and operationalize the demands that persons living with disability are required. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, there is the Global Summit where the government of Kenya undertook to implement and mainstream services, rights, and entitlements to persons with disability. And it is going to be very unfortunate because there is no way we can implement those commitments if we do not have the appropriate and accurate data on persons living with disability. I want to appreciate my colleague, Sister Senator Asige, for taking it up and also championing the rights of people living with disability. And in this case, I want to encourage the Labor Committee, whose responsibility this statement has been given to ensure that it goes beyond just getting the data, but also going to confirm that that data is a representation of the people from the youngest to the person who is in their sunset years and they are disabled and they need the support of the government of the day. Mr. Speaker, I support and I thank the Honorable Senator Sige for the bold step that she took. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, the time allocated for statements is over. Actually, you are hinting into the other businesses' time. So I kindly request the two senators who have put their requests maybe to take 1 minute each kindly. Senator Onyonka.
I would like to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the minute to speak. I am actually humbled to listen to what my brother Counsel and Madam Asige have raised about this matter. And I would like to raise this issue with the Labour Committee in this Senate to make sure that when they begin to pick views and they're beginning to engage, they involve as many of us as possible, because many of our counties, Mr. Speaker, don't have any data, information, and anything to do with people with disability until when the campaigns come. That's when we just call them and meet them around. I think we need to be more serious and let us take these challenges very deeply because they're affecting our people. Thank you, Madam Asige, for being a very good example of somebody who's been nominated to represent that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Professor Kamal Jebkoech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me the 1 or 2 minutes to add my voice to the statement that was raised by Senator Asike. I want to thank her for doing this. Mr. Speaker, it is true that data doesn't seem to be correct. Not just the data of the people with disabilities, but even children with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, there has to be a way in which we can know our children from when they are young. And as the committee looks at that, let them also look at our schools, because some schools register children one term, the next term they have new children, they don't have other children. I think this question is very important because it's going to open our minds on which solutions we should really be dealing with, or how we are going to approach this. Because we also know, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of disability has been associated with witchcraft and has been associated with so many other things. The side that people are embarrassed, some children are being locked in rooms, some children are being closed. So looking for data is going to be a very challenging thing, but we want to look for ways in which we can get to know who actually our disabled children are, people are. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we need to actually ask ourselves, is this the responsibility of a mother who gave birth to a disabled child, or it should be the responsibility of a nation that receives tax? We need to see how we can move that burden away from the parents, because, Mr. Speaker, you realize that if you have 4 children and one of them is disabled, you'll spend 50% of your time with the disabled child and 50% for the other 3 children, which means there are many challenges. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All the statements start committing to the relevant committees, standing committees of this House. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 97 students accompanied by 6 teachers from Mununga High School in Nakuru County who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 8, the Natural Resources Benefit Sharing Bill, Senate Bills number 6 of 2022, second reading division.
Yeah, the delegations are not enough. We don't have enough numbers. to get this vote. So we defer that business. Then we go to the next order.
Order number 9, the County Vocational Education and Training Bill, Senate Bills number 3 of 2022, second reading.
Honorable Senators, we concluded debate on this motion, and now I call upon the mover to reply. Senator Kajwang, Moses.
Mr. Speaker,
and Senator, okay, you should know when to raise point of order. I think the Speaker, Right Honorable Amason Kingi, has given very clear directions on when to raise a point of order. A point of order is raised when another member is contributing to anything, not just any time you raise point of order. What is which chair standing order and what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, I respect your guidance, but a point of order can be raised any time. Sometimes, even on the matter that I want to raise point of order on, Mr. Speaker,
Under which standing order?
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was instructed by your chair.
By my chair?
Yes, by the chair, by the Speaker, that today, at the beginning of the business of this House, I was supposed to present evidence on the motion that I brought yesterday in this House with regards to the issue of national security in the country. And it is in our standing orders that for whichever names that a member of this House brings in any motion, there ought to be substantiated. And Mr. Speaker, that I thought would have been, when I didn't get any direction from your chair, I thought for the purposes of this House, as a House of record, it would be important for me.
Let us give Senator Kajwang time to reply. Then I'll give you some time to substantiate the issues that I am directed. There are some issues that you want to be substantiated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang, let us conclude with this motion first.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply, having moved the motion on the bill for the County Vocational Education and Training. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all my colleagues who have contributed to debate on this bill, from the Leader of Majority, who employed his institutional memory as a ranking member of the Finance Committee to tell the House the origins of this bill that we started processing in the last Parliament but was not successful, and so we decided to revive it in this House. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of Majority cited the conditional allocation of 40 million per county that this House has appropriated for a period of 3 years. And we had realized that counties were receiving that money, and yet we didn't have a very good framework that would separate village polytechnics and homecraft centers from the purview of the TVET authority. Mr. Speaker, several other members contributed to the debate on the bill. Senator Mungatana brought the attention of the mover to certain litigation that has been ongoing with regards to employees of these village polytechnics and vocational centers, some of whom are still in the payroll of the national government. And Mr. Speaker, that was a very good observation, because we must ensure that as we devolve this function fully, we must also look at the human resource, and we must also look at the financial resources. Mr. Speaker, Senator Ledamo Lekina talked about the recognition of prior learning and that this bill must attempt to entrench that in law. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that the National Qualifications Authority, together with the TVET Authority, already are in conversation to ensure that prior learning can be recognized, so that that Otieno, who is a very talented panel beater somewhere in California, in Nairobi, can be formalized. Mr. Speaker, I believe those who are talking about hustlers and those who really believed in the agenda of hustlers would be happy if we can bring these people into the formal economy. And that can be done through recognition of prior learning, so that our experienced and our expert painters, experienced and expert mechanics, experienced and expert masons who do not have any certification can be recognized on their prior experience, and that can now allow them to tap into jobs in county governments and jobs in the formal sector. Mr. Speaker, there were a lot of observations. The Senator for Kiambu advised that we should not over-legislate for small businesses. Mr. Speaker, this legislation is to guide the establishment of vocational centers by county governments. There is still going to be space for private sector players. And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to vocational training, the private sector has played a very, very important role. It is not the intention of this bill to regulate every college or every apprentice operation or every training operation around the corner or every driving school. But, Mr. Speaker, in as much as we want a thriving private sector within the vocational training space, there has to be quality, there has to be standards, there has to be regulation, and we must ensure that there's consumer protection. And that consumer protection is protection of the students and pupils from exploitation by the owners of those institutions, especially those that are private. Mr. Speaker, more than 10 senators spoke to this bill. And I want to commit to the House that I will look at the Hansard very, very carefully. I will also look at the report of the Education Committee very carefully. And once again, I want to thank members of the Education Committee. They've done an excellent job. They have already drafted proposed amendments. And Mr. Speaker, I agree largely with most of those amendments. I also agree with many of the submissions that were made by members on the floor of this House. We will very, very quickly ensure that the necessary amendments are processed and that this bill can leave this House. And Mr. Speaker, I know Senator